My name is Elana Leoni, and I run Leoni Consulting Group. Shorthand LCG. We are a marketing agency that exclusively partners with education brands. And a lot of people say, well, what does that mean, education brands? So these are companies that either try to sell to educators in the classroom. So they might be ed tech, they might be education nonprofits, or we're trying to actually reach other people, district administrators in K through 12 education, higher education. Or on the other flip side too, is maybe we want to reach parents. We want to reach parents with really cool learning apps, products, services, you name it. So anything that we say affects learning and learning outcomes and improves education, we are a part of. We love partnering with brands around that. And then people say, well, what do you do at LCG? Because marketing, as you know, is such a broad term. And we're about 6 years old now. So in these 6 years, we've wayfinded to say, okay, here's what we do. Here's what we love doing. And here's how it really fuels our team to keep going. And because we're such a mission-oriented group. So we provide organic social media marketing, and we can get into all sorts of what that is and what that isn't, but we manage full presence on social media for brands. But we also, on the flip side, empower brands and train people up to do it themselves. So organic social media marketing is something we love. It's our bread and butter, and it's what people know us as, and specifically know me as. And a little trip into memory lane for Elana is I spent 8 years at the George Lucas Educational Foundation. And a lot of people there would know me from my efforts on social media. So I helped build up their social media presence, but also really just collaborated with influencers, collaborated with educators, really helped build up their content and partnered with people at Edutopia to understand how do we elevate educator voices in a way that truly gives them the credit they deserve, because they're just such awesome human beings.
Yeah. And not to date myself, but when I think about companies, often people know the CEO and they might know some people in the C-suite, but nowadays, if you're doing a good job with social, they'll know the social media person because that person is kind of the face of the company. It's similar to like before social media, people would know the PR, the head of PR, because the head of PR did a lot of outreach and communication about the company. Now I think things have shifted a bit, and in many companies, it's the social media person that people associate with the company.
And or the community manager, if you've got a community to this. So their job is to know everybody and to be that face, right? So I think those two positions, but when I was at Edutopia, I was really cognizant about that. I didn't want to be fully attached, and I wanted to make sure if I ever left that they would know other people too. So they know the CEO, who is still there to this day, the executive director. I'm in the business terminology world. The head of video is really into the crowd and knows a lot of the educators as well. So there's a lot of players there. Also is a community manager at Edutopia. So one of the services, organic social media management. The second service is content marketing. You know, I always ask people, are you creating content that is valuable and timely to your audience? And no, that doesn't entirely revolve just around your product. Because so many people say, my product is so awesome, I want to tell people about it. But nobody cares about your product. Our job is to make your content as valuable as possible. And that may sometimes mean not talking about your product. So we help companies with content marketing and strategy. And then lastly, we help build communities of educators and parents. So really bringing, what I always say about marketing is it's all about authenticity and listening and co-creating. And I believe all those three things do that with what our agency does. So yeah, that's a little bit about our agency. I would say our entire team are former educators, and we're just all passionate about making a difference in education. I've never been one of those people that just says, I'm going to clock in and clock out. And for me, I fully have to be invested that I'm making a difference some way, some stamp in this world. And I know my teammates are the same way. So we're pretty blessed.
And I'm guessing that when you were building your team and your teammates, that's what you look for. You look for somebody who comes from the education world, maybe former teacher, wherever. Is it a point of differentiation for you?
100%. So we can't compete with these big marketing agencies that have big budgets and big studios and all of the things that they use for scale. But what we can compete on is no one understands educators and combines it with either social media, content marketing, or community building expertise. Because you can't say things that ultimately trigger your audience. And you wouldn't really know that unless you were embedded in the day-to-day and listening and or had previous experience in the arena too. So that is a huge differentiator for us.
Yeah, I would think so. I would think so. And you speak their lingo, you understand them, and you can be more empathic because you've gone through those experiences with them. So yeah.
I said that we love them and we protect them because, if we want to ever, a lot of clients say, let's push this out. Like no one ever loves, like, think about it. I don't like things pushed out at me. Like, let's make sure that we are thinking about them and saying, is this providing value? If not, how can we tweak it so it does? Let's really go with, a lot of the times in design thinking, we talk about user-centered, really looking at designing it with the user in mind and disassociating your ego with it. It's not about.
Yeah. And in that way, your business is similar to my business because I became a marketing consultant, was solo for a while. And then I started finding other marketing consultants to work with me. And then I discovered that my talent was to help those consultants find work and find community. And so I love them because that's me. I was a marketing consultant. I still consider myself a marketing consultant, but I understand that because I've gone through the journey the same journey they've been through. So that just gives you a difference that I think people feel.
Yeah. And I love that story of yours too, because it's wayfinding to like, okay, it is a big, and I know in some of your shows, you talk about that leap of when is it right to be a consultant and when do you know? And I remember you saying something about like, actually, when you are a consultant and you eventually maybe turn it into an agency, sometimes you can have more stability than just hoping that this one company that you work for, makes it through the recession, makes it through the pandemic.
Right. Yeah. A lot of our consultants have happily found that out, that, especially in this moment in time where so many people have been laid off and they're scrambling to find something new. Usually as a consultant, if you have more than one client, and one lets you go, you have something else to fall back on or a couple other clients to fall back on. So
sometimes we see the inverse, right? So in recessions, in the pandemic, when we saw companies scale back in their in-house teams, they hired for out-of-house for the first time sometimes.
Yes.
So we see that kind of ebb and flow.
Yes, for sure. I do want to get into your service offerings because the longer I work in marketing, the more I realize that definitions for areas of marketing mean different things to different people. So when you say organic social, I think I know what it is, but I'm wondering if our audience doesn't quite know what that means. So how would you define organic social media?
Yeah, I kind of joke that I feel like I've picked the hardest service offerings for an agency to do. So organic is the stuff that every day you see a brand posting in the newsfeed. It is not affiliated with anything paid or what some people call performance marketing. It's the everyday blood, sweat, and tears sometimes of your programming and engagement on social media. So people say organic because yes, there's a brand behind it, but what you're also trying to do is spur organic overall traffic to your website. And, with organic social media, we work with clients on, okay, first and foremost, we're going to start re-engaging your maybe potentially inactive audience or small audience. So we might grow your audience, but we do that all through organic practices. That means without paid. So we might do this by listening to educators or following, like having a following strategy or a, reposting on Instagram strategy on curation into stories. So it's all about what can I do with my own human capital with a smart programming and engagement plan on all of social media. So we're talking Pinterest, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, like all of the platforms. Right. But it's really based on strategy, but the everyday effort And it's not sexy work. It's never all right, this one campaign at the end of the entire year made my brand. It's usually the culmination of every single post that you do, and you learn and reflect on stats, and you create goals on, here's my brand awareness goals, here's my engagement goals, here's how it's going to trickle down into referral traffic.
Yep. I have found that a lot of brands don't produce a lot of organic content because they're worried that it needs to look pretty, that it needs to have the perfect words. And so they don't post anything, and they don't realize that they do have some great content sitting on hard drives or other places, but they just don't think of it posting. Do you run into that? Do you find that your clients, some of them just don't know what to post?
Yeah, I think when they come to us, one of the deliverables we do is we create a programming strategy. So it automatically says, here's what you post, and here, based on what you create and what you have for your inventory. But in general, I would say people have that. They say, if I'm an executive, for example, and I want to increase my social presence and talk about my company, as you should, because you should be a chief storyteller. If
Yep.
you're a leader of an agency and you're listening to this, or if you're a consultant, I always tell people, well, don't you professionally develop? Don't you read things every day?
Yep.
So when you read things, if it passes go and you actually like it, you should share it on social media. And that's a form of you actually not creating something. It's just you giving value and potentially adding an opinion. You know, hey, this was a good read. You know, or paragraph 4 really hits the nail on the head when it says this. Or, wow, ed tech funding is down 45% year over year. Check out this report. Those are the things that you can add value without, creating this, like you said in your head, it's like, it doesn't have to be a fancy infographic or an ebook or even a polished video. And you learn by making mistakes on social media. So there isn't a day go by that we have lots of clients and there's mistakes we make, but we learn from them.
Yeah.
And we don't ever hide from them. We say, oh, this one had a spelling error. Here's how I corrected it. Or this one used a word that triggered our audience and that was new for us.
Right.
And it also helps us spark trends in the field as itself. So maybe there's a term, social and emotional learning, that people don't like anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, noted. Let's talk with the client about how to adjust our talking points.
Sure.
So, yes, it doesn't have to be perfect, I would say, especially as you start creating in short form video. Authentic is better.
Yeah.
Like everyone listening going, oh, it's not perfect. It's not this. It's not this like beautiful, composed, tasty video of recipes before and after. No one wants that anymore. Like,
Right.
Scroll TikTok. It's about a bunch of, one, it does take a lot of effort to do those TikToks if you've ever tried,
Yeah.
but it's authenticity wins.
Right.
And that's what people get to connect to, is those heartstrings,
Yeah. And I think we've already gone through this transformation where brands felt like everything they produced had to look perfect. Sometimes people have grown up in the world of advertising. So everything needs to be, it's very high stakes, like you're showing, and you don't necessarily show who you really are. You want to show the best of what you are, but social media is a different medium. And I think people look for different things. So to be authentic is really the most important thing, because people who are looking at their brands, they want to know who they are, who they really are. So you can't hide from that.
And sometimes I think that we look at social media as the post of the brand and we say, oh, we've posted too much, or they assume that the lifetime of a post will stay there. And really, when you post something, it is up to the algorithm, the news feed, to surface it up to people.
Right.
So one, your organic reach, and again, that's not paid reach. Your organic reach is, depending on the platform, anywhere from 2% to probably 20%. TikTok is now servicing over 100%, but there's not a lot of brands on TikTok, so there's a lot of inventory, right? But most people don't see your posts.
Right.
So that's a reality check for brands. And then the other one is that posts don't live very long. Even though they live on your profile, if they're not a story or any other ephemeral thing, people can't see them after they die in the newsfeed.
Right.
That might help you.
Unless they're studying your brand. So
yeah, unless they're studying your brand, but even stories go away, Snapchats go away.
Sure.
So it can give you some flexibility to try and innovate too.
Yeah. And I would love for you to go through the different channels, not all of them, but to kind of talk about maybe for your clients, what are the best channels to be in? And then also the reach thing, because I think that the last time we talked, that was news to me. I hadn't realized that. I mean, I knew that the reach would be different by platform, but I didn't know it was so dramatic. And I didn't know like TikTok had such a high level.
Yeah, and reach is fueled by user behavior and like the percentage of like the amount of minutes someone spends on the platform daily, or how much they check in. So like, for example, LinkedIn, someone will check in on LinkedIn on average 1 to 2 times a week. Right? TikTok, I believe it's over 90 minutes a day.
Wow.
It's insane, right? So those are the two spectrums, even though when people go on LinkedIn, generally they have a higher engagement rate because brands don't have as big of a following on LinkedIn as other platforms at times, depending on your industry. So when I say 2% of reach, just to, break it down, say you have 1,000 followers, right? It's 2% of those 1,000 followers. It'll actually surface up in their news feed where majority of that interaction happens.
Yeah.
The older the channel, like a Facebook, now it's almost 20 years old or something. The older the channel, the news feed, the algorithm decreases its organic reach and increases its call to action for paid or performance marketing. And so what we're seeing is, YouTube, no, not YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram going down that way of decreasing their reach more and more. But then new platforms like TikTok are increasing their reach right now to attract more people and grow more people and following.
Do you think, I mean, I think I know the answer to this, but do you think that there's a healthy balance between the two? I mean, obviously, Facebook does this because that's a revenue generator for them, but would they be better served if it was more balanced?
Eventually, yeah. And I do see, like, when people run paid ads campaigns, I check in with them and see are they happy with the results and what type of results generally. And what I hear is that TikTok is really great right now for brand awareness, especially on the B2C side, and engagement, but it really depends on the product and the niche on whether it actually is good at conversion.
Yeah.
And, I think it's a young platform, so that makes sense. When I am a brand, though, you asked a question on, hey, what channels should I be on? Are there better channels for like maybe B2B or B2C? We work with clients, and a lot of the times we go through your data to understand where your audience is. You should prioritize where your audience currently is. And you should also say, well, what kind of capacity in-house do I have? Am I good at making videos?
Yeah.
Am I good at real-time storytelling on Twitter? Does my team love to do Twitter chats? You have to think about where my audience is, and you can find that through Google Analytics. You can find that through just looking on the platform and seeing where your target audience is. And you can say, oh yeah, there's my client, or there's so-and-so. So there's qualitative and quantitative things to identify your audience on the platform, but then pair it with your capacity and joy. So what do you enjoy doing?
Right.
And then the other thing, the elephant in the room, is the opportunity too. So TikTok is an opportunity. Do I want to jump on it sooner rather than later? I don't know. What's my capacity? What do I think I can do? Can I get cheaper brand awareness on TikTok on an organic perspective? And when I say cheaper, it means, can I get more eyeballs with less time or less level of effort too? Because that's a cost too, right?
Sure. You just created a new stat.
Yeah. So I hope that helps. I think in terms of our clients for B2B, we see most people investing even more so in LinkedIn. We're seeing a lot of traction on LinkedIn with high engagement rates. It's a really great way to tell the story of your company, to highlight and appreciate your employees. So there's great retention, there's great recruiting, this is the platform that you can brag. You can humble brag, or you can just straight out brag and say, hey, I got this award, or help me congratulate, or talk about how hard it is in your journey to create an agency. Like, how, like, it's not all like cupcakes and puppies. Like, it's hard work.
It's not.
And the more vulnerable we can be about it and bring people still on our journey, they will become lifelong fans and supporters. So LinkedIn is a great space that we see on the B2B side, especially because you can couple that with paid. And a lot of people in education are trying to target specific decision makers.
Yep.
And that's, that's for all the B2B industry, is like, I want these job titles.
Sure.
And they're more than likely hanging out and not hiding, because they hide on other social media platforms. They don't hide on LinkedIn because that's who they are. That's their job.
Yeah, and most people who join LinkedIn originally, they go on to be found for in the future employers or what.
Yeah.
So yes.
I think our like 1-2 punch for like the B2B side is usually a Twitter LinkedIn combo. Twitter is a weird, wonky space right now, but it is still performing if you have good content. And that's a really big caveat. If you have good content that your audience likes and you're programming other stuff that your audience values, you can make a lot of traction in terms of brand awareness. You can get influencers on your side. You can get people to be on webinars and case studies from engaging with them on Twitter.
Yep.
So there's a lot of benefit. Twitter can be a traffic driver. It will never be your biggest traffic driver.
Okay. That's good to know. Is there any new channels that your team or yourself have looked into and are seeing as potentially the next big channel? Is there something, kind of hidden out there? Any hidden gems in terms of platforms, social platforms?
Yeah, in the education space, I feel like we are generally talking to an older demographic, and we're generally talking to people that are late adopters in terms of social media. So we tend to follow the flow and be a little bit more conservative. And we also want to make sure that when we jump into a channel, it is a commitment we make. It's not something we just go, oh, we're gonna like dip our toe in and like people get used to you and then you leave, because that can hurt your brand reputation too. Is that you need to look at social media and content marketing as a way to build trust with your audience, with your buyers, with your clients, all of them. So when you think about social media, think about a commitment. So this is not dating around, this is a marriage. So with that said, I would say that I would like to make the case more for education brands, but I also see it with general B2C brands and even some B2B, although there are people that say that B2B is not good for this channel, but TikTok. I do think that even though it's not new, quote unquote, I'm seeing the most potential.
Yeah. I mean, but you're totally right about the commitment. I had a client who they were on social media channels and they had just stopped. And I made it clear to them that, hey, you can't really stop it, because people are still going to engage with you and they're going to still send you messages. And actually on Facebook, it became this hate wall. So I actually had a project to reverse what was happening there and start engaging, start answering questions. It wasn't, it was a big lift in the beginning, but we turned it so that it didn't have to be this terrible like hate wall. Your customers are going to make it what it is. So if you're not intentional about it. So I wanted to move into content, how you guys think about content, how you structure or frame it. Anything in terms of content that you would like to share?
I think more and more I'm trying to work with brands to align it to the buyer's cycle. And EdTech has a buyer's cycle. I know every other industry has a buyer cycle too. But think about, when are your clients more likely to have those peaks in buying? When are they more likely to evaluate, get into that evaluation phase? When are they just like, forget about it, don't talk to me phase? So I like to align content with that as much as possible. There's different content marketing strategies. You can do more of that B2B or where you're directly trying to talk to your buyer. That's a content marketing strategy. And I would say there is not a content team that's big in most companies I know. It's very important for you to focus and pick one lane and do it really well. Don't say, oh, we're going to do this and talk to teachers here and then counselors here. But no one knows to follow you. You can't build up an audience. And when you're trying to talk to everyone, you talk to no one, right? So pick your lane, dive deep, And then you can correspondingly create goals based on who you're talking to. And so that's first and foremost, it's just figuring out who you're talking to, who you're not talking to, and how do they like to consume information.
Right.
And if you don't know, ask them.
Right.
But you also have people in the industry you can talk to, other consultants. Hey, how do they generally get information? So create it in the way that they're more likely to consume the information. So we work with to the content strategy part, but also to the execution. And sometimes we just go into execution and show people that it could be done quickly and it could be done in a way that provides value without a big rigmarole. You know, you can create high value content without it being this big thing that's designed and, you know, it's just like exhausting. It doesn't have to be that way.
Sure.
So we work with influencers to create content based on topics the brand cares about. So again, it's not talking about a feature, it's talking about something that the brand fully aligns with and their product stands for.
Yeah.
Right.
I think I know the answer to this question, but where do you stand in terms of, we still have lots of clients that like the written word. They like white papers and newsletters and blog posts and articles. But at the same time, we know that so much of what people are paying attention to are videos and podcasts and more newer media. Tell me a little bit about where the mix is in terms of what you're creating for clients and how you talk to them about that.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I would say the written word is not out. Written word is great for SEO. It's great for different types of learners. So for example, we have a podcast that we do now bi-weekly called All Things Marketing and Education. And our clients, a lot of times they have podcasts or we help them create podcasts. Mm-hmm. But I think it's a pure waste to just have something in audio form because you have great content. Let's create it and slice and dice it in multiple mediums in multiple ways. Mm-hmm. So for example, with this podcast, like we can slice and dice video. Yep. This can go on YouTube. This can be an actual podcast and just audio only. And then we can also create a blog post, which you all do as well, right? So how can we create a blog post? How can this trigger an image series or a story series or a reel series? So it's triggered by good information, good quality things that your audience values, but you can slice and dice it into so many different mediums. Yep. A lot of the times we just create a little bit of a recipe for our clients to say, okay, if you're already doing this, you've already decided you've got your board on board or whoever you need to bless like a podcast that costs a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Let's spread it out and try to figure out how we can repurpose it in multiple ways. So I usually jump on the bandwagon of what they've already decided, honestly, yep. Because I'm not going to change minds. And it's really hard to talk content marketing strategy with people that don't have fundamental basics of it, you know?
Sure.
I go with the flow and I try to show them that it can be easy, fun, and I don't know, just like all around, just like here's a process that works. And then we can slice and dice it and it can reverberate in all these other spaces too. Yep. So I love blogs. I think the last research I showed is longer is better too. People are always saying like short form blogs under 700, 150 words. I think the last blog report I read was like over 1,500 words they recommend.
Oh, wow.
So it's not over. The other thing you can do with podcasts is you can put the transcript online for SEO and crawlability. So there's like long form content. People will read content, especially in education, but in other industries too. If the content is great, they will continue to read. Yep. Same with video. People say, what's the video length that you need? It's how long the video is good.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
But all sorts of I would say that podcasts are getting quite crowded. The space, you're gonna have a harder time getting more listeners, but if you can slice and dice it, it's worth it, you know, in different mediums. And a lot of the times we work with clients on webinars. If you're doing webinars or if you're speaking on a panel and you have it recorded, you can work with a team to slice it up, put those videos up, you know, do a blog post based on it, do high level quotes, tweet in real time. Like you can tell.
Yeah, there's so many things you can do. And you're right. The nugget is if it's good content, it doesn't matter what the format is. And if it's good content, you can probably do both written word, audio, video, and you just have to have the right people to help you with that. So,
and one pro tip I would say, just to close out the content stuff, if you've got like 4 awesome blogs, for example. You got great popular blogs and they somewhat tell a story. Maybe it's like using video in the classroom or AI, artificial intelligence for some industry. If you have some blogs that are popular and they cohesively somewhat tell a story, think about packaging them into an ebook. And then add in a couple of bonuses in the ebook there. Then you have a lead magnet that's based on not a lot of level of effort, just some design. And then usually I say, do a heartfelt letter from the CEO or something, put in a lot of like bonuses, like worksheets or something, but you've got a lead magnet.
Yep.
And that's pretty awesome. So it's all about repurposing content based on data.
Yep. That's great. That's great. I have a few questions from the audience.
Ooh.
So, and then we'll get into community because I don't want to leave community out. But first question from the audience: what impact do you see with AI, specifically Chat GPT, having on this space?
There's a lot. There's already been a lot. I'm following it. I'm kind of scared of it because
Yep.
it's so good. There was a student that recently just invented a way to find out what papers have been written.
Yep.
And that was interesting. AI has always been in education, but not to this level of what we're seeing. I think it'll be interesting when they put a paywall up to see what changes there. But it's like a soap opera. I'm just reading all the articles and going, oh, I didn't even know it could do that. Oh, I didn't know it could do that. Interesting. I recently talked to an AI expert in education and she said some interesting things, but again, she's just learning too. We're all just playing catch up, but trying to figure out, I think it slightly reminds me of cell phones in the classroom way back in the day. We were all scared of them. We all like instinctively said, don't use them, and then had all these policies. And it was very punitive. We need to embrace it and we need to understand it. And that's what I would urge all of our educators that are struggling right now is if kids are interested, let's bring that interest into the classroom because they're going to use it anyways. And
Right.
Punitive stuff actually makes them use it more.
Yeah, and somebody pointed this out to me. It's like there is going to be a bit of an arms race between AI generated content and then the tools that can identify whether it's real or not. So it could be that at some points the authenticators of the content are pretty good, and so even if you were to use one of these tools to cheat, you could get caught. There's this weird dynamic.
Yes,
I
it
think
is, but at the same time, it's making me laugh because there's a lot of AI used in grading, for example. So if you have an AI grader bot grading something generated by AI, what world do we live in, you know?
Yeah, it is a fascinating area, and it's coming maybe faster than I feel like this is the first year where it's got to be one of those things that's fairly top of mind for a lot of marketers, just because of the things that I mean. I know in our own community, people are experimenting with it now, to create things for themselves, whether it's articles or I think there was somebody in our community that had a resume created for them, and it was pretty good. That's the really crazy thing. Anyways, let's go to community. So, how do you define community, and what kind of services do you guys offer?
I always thought I was good at community until I met my colleague Porter Palmer, and she's now I think 4.5 years with the agency, but she helped lead the community, one of the biggest educator communities in discovery education. They're called DenStar educators, and she's Southern, so I'm gonna butcher her accent. She said, Elana, you can't have community. You can't just call it a community. Your members have to call it a community for it to be a community. If they don't say it's a community, you can use the word community all you want, and you see it all the time. Like, just look at emails. Everyone says, join our community, and you go there and it's like a Facebook page and there's nothing going on. Yep. Members have to say it's a community, and members have to care about each other. I have to go there and be like, hey, Ken, what's up? Mm-hmm. And I have to know a little bit and feel like I belong. And there's a little bit of social identity theory in there too, is that they also have to identify who they are with this community. I'm part of the EM marketing community. I'm a Den-Star educator. I put it in my profiles everywhere. I put it on my resume. I'm proud. This is who it defines me at times. So there are different levels of community, but at the end of the day, members have to say it's a community. In order for it to be a true community, you as a brand are not leading the charge. It's not
Right.
some linear marketing initiative that you're like, okay, 10 million impressions by May. It's, what do you want, members? What do we want? Where's that middle that makes sense for us to co-create with you? So co-creation. So I know this sounds touchy-feely, but if people are interested in community work, I'm not making this up. There is a community called CMX. David Spinks used to be over there. I think Bevy just bought them. Rich Millington, very good. They blog about community all the time, and I've learned from them. So community is not linear, and it is fully based on just making sure members feel welcome and that they connect with one another. And when they connect with one another, they say, oh, it's because of EM marketing that I connected. And that value that that other member gives that member is attributed to you.
Right.
And that's genius.
Right. Community to me is one of the hardest things to achieve in marketing.
Which is why, again, we chose it.
Because to me, the content can be somewhat straightforward. You align with the goals of your clients. They say, okay, this content is going to be this format. We're going to do it in this time frame, and then it's out there in the world. And often clients don't track performance, but community is so tangible. It's like you either know people are talking or not talking, engaging or not engaging. So it is a tricky thing.
The quantitative aspects of community get tricky, and it depends 100% on the platform that you build your community on too. So we work with a lot of clients on Facebook groups, but we work with some clients on Mighty Networks or forums on their own website. So it's limited by what metrics you have as well, quantitatively, but qualitatively you need to add some things in as well.
What would you say are the few things that make for a successful community? Like we talked about some of this already. It's like the members really have to care about each other. But so many communities are online where they don't have the benefit of meeting each other in person, in human. Like, are there a few tips you can give people in terms of like, how do you build community, especially in this world today where there's less in-person meeting and maybe less appetite for that?
I would say the number one success for community is making sure that you know how, as a community manager or a marketing director or a head of growth, wherever community fills in, you know how to say, here's what my community is, here's how it fills into what we're doing as a company in terms of strategic initiatives, operation initiatives. Here's the dotted line and how it connects to what the organization cares about. And what that'll do is create buy-in. If you don't have buy-in and your community's doing awesome things, but you're siloed and you're that sole community manager champion, it'll die.
Yeah.
And it breaks my heart when it does die, because it's doing awesome things. It's just that manager hasn't taken the time to translate it into what people care about most, if that makes sense. So I would say that's a big thing. The other thing is to know your focus, know what type of community you're building. There's something called a SPACES model, SPACES. We wrote about it. I can send you a link, but I think it originally derives from either Richard Millington has wrote about it, but also David Spinks. But it talks about what type of community you're building. And what it does, just like in content marketing, I was saying you're creating content for this type of audience, this type of part of their journey. It tells you exactly what type of community you're building. It could be a customer support community. 100%, it's all about just, and that is the best community, by the way, to create ROI. So you can easily say it costs us $20 generally with the call center to resolve one ticket. In our community in general, we resolve 500 tickets and we don't do anything. So you can put a quantified amount of money saved with customer support communities. And that's really, hey, I'm having trouble with this. My button's not working. How do I adopt this to a rural setting? I want to add a Keynote template as an add-on, like whatever it may be. Customer support is one of the more popular communities that you'll see. There's a new community that evolved called customer success.
Mhm.
And that might sound similar, but it's not. It's all about active community, like active members. And a lot of you that, are consultants that may be working with companies, most of the time your companies will say that they struggle with retention.
Mhm.
They struggle with the renewal. They have high rates of churn, especially in the pandemic, right? Free stuff, and then they get rid of it or whatnot. What that community is, a customer success community, it should be built in your onboarding, and it should help that community member start with one small feature and become active users.
Yeah.
So they can't see a moment in their lives where they don't renew, because it's integral to their everyday. They become active users by being in a community of other educators talking about how they use it, talking about other people, how they use the Instapot. And there's 10 million ways to use the Instapot, So we call those customer success communities. And in order to measure ROI, we correlate that to a lot of the churn rates that you see in companies. And there is a way to do it if you have a CRM hooked up too. So there's all sorts of types of communities. There's product innovation communities. There's communities that just talk about the topic you care about. Like maybe you create a community that's just about how to freelance,
Right.
but it's not about like pitching your product or your business or your service. It's just like a bunch of freelancers talking about how cool it is to freelance and how hard it is.
Mhm.
And that is an engagement type of community.
Yep. That's great.
And we talks on that for hours, but I would just say, when you think about success in community, you want to think about a focus, you want to think about a buy-in, and you want to think about moving small, learning, doing, like, you can go faster if you go a lot slower in the beginning. Start small and don't worry about those vanity metrics that people are pressuring you on. That's an opportunity in my mind to educate them on what is truly valuable in communities. And sometimes I don't mean to be a jerk about it, but I just say, would you rather have a community, a quote unquote community of 2 million members that don't know each other and aren't engaged at all?
Yeah.
And the reach of that is 2%. Or would you rather have 100 people, the reach is 90%, and they are engaged and they're willing to do anything for you?
Right.
Like, you choose,
Yeah. And a small community is okay. If you have a small engaged community, that can be of tremendous value too. You can use it for, brands can use it in a different way. They could be little mini focus groups for what they need to do in the future. It doesn't have to be every customer engaged in there. That's the kernel or the start of it. It's like, I would actually lean into what is going to be small that we can start to get rapid engagement and then grow from there.
And you want to make sure, so community when you're thinking about focus, think about, am I creating a community for my users, or am I creating a community for my buyers? And there's a case to be made on both of those, but you have to pick one. You have to pick one and focus, right?
Yeah. I do have another question from the community, and then I'm going to let you go because we've taken too much of your time. But this is more of a question about what's happened over the pandemic. So the first question is it a challenge to engage educators on social media? But are educators embracing technology and social media more after the pandemic, since the pandemic has had to shift so many of them to being better online?
I'd say yes and no. I've been working with educators in social media since 2004 or something. And there was a lot of myths around, they have to be a young educator to be on social, they have to be this or that. And I found that there's all walks of life of educators. And because education is such an isolated position, they're just grasping at straws to say, somebody please, am I doing something that's valuable in my classroom? I need help. Can I collaborate? So they're using social media, I think, in a way that was value driven and selfless and not promoting. It was like, how can we collaborate? How can we learn from each other? So I felt like there was an acceleration of educators using it, because in my lens, all I did was work with those really tech savvy educators. I realized that not all educators are like that. I get it. I did see a lot of educators that were tech hesitant at times with certain tech become, this is a necessity. I have to use it.
Yeah.
But what I have seen talking to majority of people is that not all of them stayed with it, because it was a little trauma induced, to be honest, right? It was like, you have to learn this in one day. And, it was didn't have enough PD, didn't have a lot of grace or compassion passion. So I would say at least half of those people that were using the technology in different ways have just gone back to normal ways.
Yeah.
But there has been some movement in different areas. It really depends on the location and the district and the support of the leadership and the culture of the school. So I hate to give you a lawyer answer, but I've seen both. But most people assume, oh, the tech boom happened because of the pandemic and ed tech. There was a bunch of investment that happened in ed tech as a result.
Yep.
Lots of free user accounts being created, all of the things, right? But then when tech companies ran out of money or space, or they couldn't support educators anymore, and we went back to in-person, some educators just said, okay, I've been teaching for 20 years. I'm going to go back to where I was doing like lessons, and they were working fine. Some say, wow, I'm changing it entirely and I'm flipping my classroom. But it's not all of those educators that turn to tech
Sure.
are still using tech.
Sure. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, one last question to close, which is I believe in putting things out in the universe. So when you think about your clients, what kind of company or leader or culture of a company is ideal for Leoni Consulting Group? Like what does the dream client look like that knocks on your door?
I like that. It's like putting it out in the universe, right? So we do talk a lot about this, and we have now like created product lines for different types of clients too. But I would say the types of clients that we tend to have a long relationship with are ones that are used to working with agencies, love to collaborate, but don't necessarily need to do it all too. Some clients just say, you do it all, you know the brand so well, we'll give you access to Google Docs and content and you go. And a lot of times we just meet with them monthly and we just give them reports on here's how we're increasing impressions and engagement.
Yeah.
But some clients are like, hey, no, let's collaborate on a reel. And there's something coming up for MLK Day and we're going to create a reel and we're going to do this. So that collaboration and trust is key. They have to fundamentally understand what content marketing, what social media on an organic perspective, and what community building can do. I can't continue to make the case for it. Because then that is like, same with the offerings that you do. You can't continue to convince somebody what you're doing is going to make a difference because it's exhausting and you spend too much time revisiting fundamentals when we really should be spending that time collaborating and creating and learning and accelerating. So those are the types of clients I would say. Generally, they are later stage education companies. So either Series C and beyond. One of our longer standing clients is Meta, and they are an education division within a big tech company. So sometimes we work within bigger, more stable, although nothing's stable anymore, bigger companies, and that tends to work well too. We also have a lot of success with higher education institutions too. And we found a lot of joy with them because we give them a lot of value and a lot of expertise they wouldn't have in-house.
Right. That's great. That's great. So hopefully in the future, something will come your way and you'll think, oh, that came because we put it out there. Yeah.
I would say the one thing that we're experimenting with is starting to do packages for startups now. So what do they need? How can we give them a little bit of lessons and blueprints to get to where they need to go? And eventually they'll grow where they might need more sophisticated or advanced help down the road.
Right. That's great. That's great. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about in closing or?
No, I would just say everything that we've talked about, it's important for you to understand what they are and what they aren't. And I appreciate you like asking those specific questions, but how do you measure success? And I would always ask, if you're going to be using a consultant, like what's the time frame like? When can we start? What part of the funnel are we operating in? And at what point do we start moving down? And a good consultant will look at your data and say, here's typically what we see, but we're going to have to look and see how your audience reacts. Well, so being informed around those things and managing expectations is important. I would just say, if you're a marketer out there or a freelancer or anything, it's all about just listening as much as possible to your audience and elevating their voices as much as possible. And that's what we love doing on all of our product lines.
100%. The best marketers are the best listeners. Always been that way, and good marketers know that. So I think I was taught that by my favorite manager. He was like, "You're a good listener, you'll be a good marketer." So yeah. Okay, great. Thank you so much for your time, and hope to see you soon.
Yeah. And if people want to like figure out where I'm at and stuff, we're at leoniconsultinggroup.com. We've got a podcast, we've got blogs, we have a brand new planner that just launched. It's our most popular download called the EdTech Marketers Planner. It's geared toward education, but you don't have to be in education to get benefit of it too. So take a look at that. And I'm on Twitter at Elana Leoni as well.
Great. Shame on me for not asking you to say that, and we'll put it in the mentions in YouTube, and so people can find you quickly.
I like talking with people, so if people found it valuable, happy to continue.
Okay, thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Good day.